Experimental probability. In this chapter, you will understand the experimental probability introduction, experimental probability definition, experimental probability formula, solved examples, and practice problems. Experimental probability introduction. In mathematics, probability refers to the chance of occurrence of a specific event. Probability can be measured on a scale from 0 to 1. The probability is 0 for an impossible event. The probability is 1 if the occurrence of the event is certain. There are two approaches to study probability: experimental and theoretical. Suppose you and your friend toss a coin to decide who gets the first turn to ride a new bicycle. You chose heads and your friend chooses tails. Can you guess who will win? No. You have 1 by 2 chance of winning, and so does your friend. This is theoretical since you are predicting the outcome based on what is expected to happen and not on the basis of the outcomes of an experiment. So what is experimental probability? Experimental probability is calculated by repeating an experiment and observing the outcomes. Let's understand this a little better. Experimental probability definition. Experimental probability or empirical probability is the probability calculated by performing actual experiments and gathering or recording the necessary information. How would you define an experiment? The math definition of an experiment is a process or procedure that can be repeated and that has a set of well-defined possible results or outcomes. Consider the same example. Suppose you flip the coin 50 times to see whether you get heads or tails, and you record the outcomes. Suppose you get heads 20 times and tails 30 times. Then the probability calculated using these outcomes is experimental probability. Here the experimental meaning is connected with such experiments used to determine the probability of an event. Now that you know the meaning of experimental probability, let's understand its formula. Experimental probability versus theoretical probability. Theoretical probability expresses what is expected. On the other hand, experimental probability explains how frequently an event occurred in an experiment. If you roll a dice, the theoretical probability of getting any particular number, say 3, is 16. However, if you roll the dice 100 times and record how many times 3 appears on top, say 65 times, then the experimental probability of getting 3 is 65,100. Theoretical probability for event A can be calculated as follows. PA equal to number of outcomes favorable to event A, number of possible outcomes. In the example of flipping a coin, the theoretical probability of the occurrence of heads or tails on tossing a coin is pH is equal to 12 and p tails is equal to 12, since possible outcomes are 2, head or tail. Experimental probability example. Let's take a look at some of examples of experimental probability. Example 1. Ben tried to toss a ping pong ball in a cup using 10 tails, out of which he succeeded 4 times. P win. Number of success by number of tails. 4, 10, 25. Example 2. Two students are playing in a game of dice. They want to know how many times they land on 2 on the dice. If the dice is rolled 20 times in a row, the experimental probability of rolling a 2 is equal to the number of times 2 appeared by the number of tails, which is equal to 520. Fun facts. Probability of an event always lies between 0 and 1. You can also express the probability as a decimal and a percentage. Conclusion. Experimental probability is a probability that is determined by the results of a series of experiments. Solved examples. Leo tosses a coin 25 times and observes that the head appears 10 times. What is the experimental probability of getting a head? Solution. Number of times head appeared by total number of tails is equal to 1025, which is equal to 25 and 0.4. The number of cakes a baker makes per day in a week is given as 7, 8, 6, 10, 2, 8, 3. What is the probability that the baker makes less than 6 cakes the next day? Solution. Number of cakes baked in each day in a week. Out of 7 days, there were 2 days highlighted in bold on which the baker made less than 6 cookies. P less than 6 cookies is equal to 27. The chart below shows the number of times a number was shown on the face of a tossed dice. What is the probability of getting a 3 in this experiment? Solution. Number of times 3 showed is equal to 7 and number of tosses is equal to 3. Practice problems. In a class, a student is chosen randomly in 5 drills to participate in 5 different events. Out of chosen students, 3 were girls and 2 were boys. What is the experimental probability of choosing a boy in the next event? You have to try and do this on your own. A. 3 by 5. B. 2 by 3. C. 3 by 2. A manufacturer makes 1000 tablets every month. After inspecting 100 tablets, the manufacturer found that 30 tablets were defective. What is the probability that you will buy a defective tablet? 30%, 100%, 5% or 2%? The 3 coins are tossed 1000 times simultaneously and we get 3 tails, which is equal to 160, and 2 tails 260 and one tail 320. No tails 260. What is the probability of occurrence of two tails? 0.16, 0.32, 0.26, 0.23. Please answer in the comment box below.